Yeah, even in a tightly competitive West, I expect the San Antonio Spurs to be really good this year. What's going on with y'all, my people? That's pretty much what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm also going to be going over the little timeline they've had with Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, they picked him number one overall in 2023, and we saw a lot of flashes of all-time great potential in his first two seasons. In his first season, Victor played 71 games, averaged 21.4, almost 11 rebounds with almost 4 assists per game and 4 blocks per game, which if you actually look on ESPN.com, y'all, he averaged 3.6 blocks in his rookie year and 3.8 blocks in his second year. So he has a total of almost 4 blocks for his career averages. You know what I'm saying? So that's very impressive from a guy like that. Obviously, y'all are going to say that, yeah, he's 7'5". That's what he's supposed to do. But remember, this guy is supposed to be the most complete basketball player at that height. However, despite Wemby's phenomenal rookie season, the Spurs ultimately missed the playoffs. They went 22-16 in Wemby's rookie year. Still a bad team, right? So in the 2024 offseason, they made a big signing, which a lot of people don't think this is a big signing now because of his age. They signed one Chris Paul. Now, let me tell y'all why I thought the Chris Paul signing was a big deal for the San Antonio Spurs at the time. And this is going to be some revisionist history for y'all, so bear with me. If we look back in 2019, the Oklahoma City Thunder traded Paul George for SGA, and then Russell Westbrook got dealt to the Houston Rockets for Chris Paul. This was following a season where SGA came off a pretty decent rookie campaign, obviously playing behind Lou Williams and at the time Tobias Harris and then Montrezl Harrell. It wasn't easy for him to get all the shots, but I think when Tobias got traded from LA, it gave Shea the green light even more, but still, he didn't really put up the numbers that we've seen ever since getting traded to Oklahoma City. They also signed at the time undrafted free agent Lou Dort, and Chris Paul getting there, and I guess you can also credit guys like Dennis Schroeder and Danilo Gallinari, but Shea has always credited Chris Paul, and to an extent, Pat Beverly and Lou Williams, but if Chris wasn't on the team, and he didn't mentor Shea in his second year, a lot of people say this, and Shea said himself, he's not the player he is now, because Chris taught Shea how to get to his spots, how to read the room, read the court, how to read plays on both sides of the ball, and how to lead your team the right way. And obviously it worked out for SGA because Shea won his ring this past NBA season. And I knew when Chris signed with the San Antonio Spurs, I said this was going to make a big difference for Wemby's career. Even if they didn't make the playoffs, Chris was going to teach Wemby some valuable lessons that he taught Shea in his second year with Oklahoma City. And obviously you have the other guys like Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, Keldon Johnson, even though he's had DeMar DeRozan as a mentor as well. And then a rookie Stephon Castle from UConn who put up some really good numbers in his rookie year. Not great, but pretty decent enough, even though he shot 28% from three, 42% from the field. Castle himself won his rookie of the year as well. We have to take this into account that down the line, it may not be right now. I don't view them as finals contenders now, but I do think that Chris Paul's leadership and locker room presence will have an everlasting effect on the Spurs team going forward, same way it had an everlasting effect on Shea's career. In last season's trade deadline, they made the trade for De'Aaron Fox, who had a pretty ugly fall with the Sacramento Kings, especially when they fired Mike Brown, and De'Aaron only played 17 games with the Spurs, averaging 19.7 and 7 assists a game. Pretty good numbers, but a lot of people have to remember he's supposed to be the second option next to Victor Wembanyama. He was a first option all those years in Sacramento, even with Domantas Sabonis on the team. Now, obviously, his three-point percentage wasn't great, shooting 27% off of 6 attempts, but I attribute that as him just adapting to the Spurs system after spending all those years with Sacramento. And I watched all those games that he played next to Victor Wembanyama. Now, I understand it's a small sample size. De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama only played 3 games together, but in those games, those two looked really comfortable playing with one another, and they looked like they complemented each other's game really well. De'Aaron Fox, when you give him a guy that can space the floor like Victor can, because I saw him do it with Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron can be his natural self, which is what? A playmaking slasher. And obviously Victor being the ultimate unicorn that can do it all on offense, and obviously him being 7'5" really helps out a lot. It just felt like between De'Aaron and Victor, both of them can take pressure off of one another, especially when it comes to scoring. And they won 2 of those 3 games they played together. Now, unfortunately, both of their seasons were cut short because on one hand, Victor had a deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder. For those of y'all that don't know, that was the injury that affected Damian Lillard and his calf, and unfortunately for Dame, he tore his Achilles in the playoffs. And De'Aaron Fox's season ended because he underwent surgery for tendon damage in his left pinky finger, which is an injury he sustained in training camp with the Sacramento Kings. He played through it the entire season, but the Spurs ultimately shut him down to allow him ample time to recover, and it'll allow him more time to build chemistry with this young Spurs team this upcoming season. And of course, last season, the Spurs missed the playoffs, but they did improve on their record from what was a 22-win season in 2023-24 into a 34-win season. Now, what are my expectations for the Spurs? Obviously, I don't expect them to be top 3. I don't expect them to be top 4. But I do not expect them to be a pretty middle-of-the-pack to a really bad team. What do I mean by that? Obviously, going from 22 to 34 wins is an improvement, right? Now, let me put this into perspective for some of y'all out here. I'm going to go back to the example I used with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. When Shai was taken in by the Oklahoma City Thunder in his second year, the Thunder were a really good team in 2019-20. But for a couple seasons, from 2020 to 2022, they were a really bad team. Shai got his extension, they drafted J-Dub in 2022, and the Thunder looked like a pretty respectable team. I think they won 40 games that season, but they ultimately got knocked out of playoff contention via the play-in by, I think it was the Minnesota Timberwolves that year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it was Minnesota. But they bounced back, and they became first seed in the West for 2 consecutive years, and like I alluded to earlier, they won the championship this past season. Paulo Banchero, the Orlando Magic, is another example. He won Rookie of the Year in 2023, but his Magic team at the time missed the playoffs. They went 34-48, the same identical record that this Spurs team last season ended up having. Since then, Paulo, alongside guys like Franz and I think Jalen Suggs one year, and then he had a whole load of vets like Gary Harris and Joe Ingles at the time, and last year was KCP. Paulo and the Magic made it back to the playoffs 2 years in a row. They forced a Game 7 against the Magic, but unfortunately the next year they ran into a buzzsaw, which was the then defending champion Boston Celtics. But the point is that the Magic and the Thunder got better every single year. And I'll make a separate video about them because I don't want to focus too much on the Magic because I'm talking about the Spurs. But you see the progression with that Magic team. Obviously, injuries became their crutch in 2024-25. But you see it with the Oklahoma City Thunder especially. You saw the elevation of Shai's play. You saw guys like Lou Dort stepping up to the plate. You saw J-Dub and Chet Holmgren, their rise to being part of Oklahoma City's Big Three. And then you add guys like Hartenstein and Caruso. Caruso is a proven winner. Now, it's the same thing with the Spurs. They not only added De'Aaron Fox at the trade deadline, but they went out and got veterans like Kelly Olynyk from the Washington Wizards. Kelly is a proven vet that could provide spacing and shooting off the San Antonio bench, and his vet leadership can really go a long way for them. And then you had a guy like Luke Cornett, who was part of that 2024 Boston Celtics championship team, and he was a pivotal role player for the Celtics these past 2 years. And this past NBA draft, they drafted Carter Bryant from Arizona, and they drafted Ron Harper's son, Dylan Harper, from Rutgers University. Both of them are really good players. I know Carter Bryant's more of a defensive specialist, and I think Dylan Harper can be an electric scorer off the bench, complementing Devin Vassell. So yeah, overall, I do think the Spurs should be pretty good this season. Again, I don't expect them to be finals contenders, but I do think they should be a respectable team, even in the tough Western Conference, because they have a lot of talent on their roster. Obviously, there's no words that need to be said about guys like De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama. Victor is getting better every single year, and De'Aaron Fox looks like he is the perfect number 2 guy, again, after all those years in Sacramento, next to Wemby. And the Spurs have a lot of great role players that can complement De'Aaron and Victor. For example, Keldon Johnson. He's a strong-willed, versatile player that's known for his ability to attack the basket, and he's a really good rebounder and a pretty good defender on the low post. And Keldon can defend various positions as well. Devin Vassell is a really good mid-range shot creator off the bench. He's kind of like a Lou Will Light. Julian Champagnie, really good 3-and-D wing. Jeremy Sohan, he's a good defender and a good playmaker himself at the 4. And I forgot to bring him up when talking about Chris Paul. Last offseason, they got Harrison Barnes from the Sacramento Kings. Harrison Barnes knows what it takes to win. HB was a part of those playoff runs with Golden State and with De'Aaron. He was also part of that recent playoff run with the Sacramento Kings. And because of the fact they have a balance of talented young players and savvy veterans, I do expect this team to be, at the very minimum, a play-in team, or at the very maximum, a top 6 seed. And in my personal opinion, it'll be very disappointing come March, April. This team has to fight for a play-in spot, and they have to rely on other teams losing just for them to crack a spot in the play-in. But like I said, I do not expect the San Antonio Spurs to be finals contenders right away, even with the additions of all these veterans and then again adding De'Aaron Fox in last year's trade deadline. But at the same time, I do not expect to see this team having to fight for the number 10 spot, even with the West being tough as is. Because like I said, this team is very talented from top to bottom. Wemby's only getting better. De'Aaron Fox is going to have a full season with the Spurs. And again, and to be honest with y'all, this team could be a sleeper team in the Western Conference. And I do think, just like I said with the Portland Trail Blazers, they could shock a lot of people, and this team has potential to break a lot of hearts. And this could be a long shot, but this team has the potential to go on a deep playoff run too. But again, not contenders in the slightest, I don't feel like. So if you see the Spurs in the playoffs, do not sleep on this team because they could mess around and take you to 7 games. You know what I'm saying? And let me give y'all one more thing before I let y'all go. I want to talk about the new coach, Mitch Johnson. Mitch became the interim head coach after Gregg Popovich suffered a mild stroke last November, which caused him to get hospitalized, and thank God Pop is doing okay, and he received treatment the month after, but unfortunately, it caused Pop to retire from coaching. Now he's the president of basketball operations for the Spurs. And Mitch really didn't do that bad of a job with the roster as the interim head coach. It's just, you can't really do much if Charles Bassey is your backup center. No disrespect to Charles Bassey, but again, he's more of a deep rotational player and a bench warmer guy, not a key pivotal rotational player on a playoff team, in my personal opinion. Now, Mitch has a really good team around him, and just like the stuff I said about Chauncey Billups with the Portland Trail Blazers, Mitch also can prove that he is an NBA-level head coach. And I do believe that Mitch has the opportunity to be a really great head coach in this league because the one coach I could really compare him to is one Monty Williams, another one of Chris Paul's former coaches. And the reason why I compare Mitch to Monty is because he has that calm leadership and poise as a coach, and he's a player's coach as well. Which in the modern NBA, you need to have a player's coach that can relate to the players. You know what I'm saying? And Mitch does bring that to the Spurs, but at the same time, he wants to maintain the culture that Gregg Popovich set in San Antonio all these years. And I'm happy the Spurs gave Mitch a chance. And just like I said about Chauncey Billups, I never said this about JJ Redick. I've kind of touched on it a little bit when talking about DeAndre and the Lakers. But my point is, this is what happens when you give a guy like that a chance, because they have a lot of good stuff to prove. That's why Portland has kept Chauncey, even though a lot of Portland fans were calling for his job. And this is why JJ Redick got a lot of praise for doing the stuff that he's done as a first-year head coach. But yeah, this is why I believe, and even in a tough Western Conference, I expect the San Antonio Spurs to be a good team. They have talent. Wemby's getting better, De'Aaron Fox is going to have a full season, and Mitch Johnson has a lot to prove, and he has a lot of potential to be a really good head coach and even a great head coach in this league. But let me turn it over to you guys. What do you guys think of the San Antonio Spurs this upcoming year? Do you think they'll be a good team? Do you think they'll be a playing team? Do you guys think they could be top 4 in the West? Whatever you guys' thoughts, please make sure to share your thoughts down below. Again, more videos coming soon covering the offseason. We are a month away, baby. We are a month away from basketball being back. Football returns in a couple days. We'll have the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not going to be making any content about football, but I just want to let y'all know that I'm really starting to get into football. So if you guys want to shout some quick football takes down below, feel free to, and I'll respond to the best of my ability to them. But seriously, though, what is your guys' outlook on the Spurs? Do you think they'll be good? Do you think they'll be trash? What do you guys think of Victor Wembanyama? What do you think of De'Aaron Fox? Whatever y'all thoughts, please make sure to leave it down in the comments below. But until then, that's the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.